Okay, that's right.
Let's talk first about historical nonfiction. Okay, so it's a specific genre, and it changes a lot as you work with different age groups. So let's look at one that I'll recommend. This is called Jose, Born to Dance, and this is about an actual real person who his name is Jose Limon, and he was a dancer. And so for little kids, you'll see these ones that are much more like, just like a regular story that you might read. And if you read this through to your class, you'll see it's got like all the action words like bam, 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 a baby was born, that kind of stuff. So it reads like fiction, but it's actually a real story about a real person. So when you're working with little kids, you'll see a lot like these. A similar one is this Abraham Lincoln. This is a little bit older style of book, but very similar type of content. Basically, it's the story of Abraham Lincoln as told in a way that younger kids could understand. So within these kind of children's books, there's often a little bit of leeway with the facts. The facts aren't quite as hard and fast as when you start to get to the older kids. And that's when you can really start to see a difference between historical fiction, historical nonfiction. So in an older book for upper elementary, middle school, you'll see that there's a lot more primary source documents, for example, photographs, real letters, things like that, and a lot more emphasis on the historical facts. So a little bit starting to move away from just telling a story, or especially an inspirational story. A lot of the times when you're looking at material for the little kids, it's very inspirational. It's not ambiguous at all. Most history is very ambiguous. So as you get a little bit older, you start to see that reflected within the literature. So it's really good to compare a middle school book to one that's for the little kids. Here's one again that's for the little kids, a story of Rosa Parks, a real person. You can see how many of these are biographies when you're dealing with little kids, because they can relate to a single person. And again, if you read this through, you'll see that it's very much the same way we tell a story about someone that didn't actually exist in real life. So that's historical non-fiction, history. Basically, think of it history books, right? It's a history book. Okay, so then historical fiction. Historical fiction, you are going to be looking for, usually with the kids, it's a story about a person. Oftentimes, it's a story written about a kid about the same age, or maybe just a little bit older than the kid who's supposed to be reading it, or that you're reading it to, right? And it serves a lot of the same purposes as the history for the little kids. It's often, there's inspirational or something that the kid is going to be able to relate to within it. So one thing that might be really interesting for you guys to do and to look at is to kind of see how these stories change over time too, depending on what we want children to grow up and to be like.